Good evening, and welcome to the television graveyard? This is a weird month.
It is a weird month. We've moved out of the television graveyard.
We are in the adjacent film flop mortuary, and it's February, so you know what that means, kids? It's Razzie month!
You knew what that meant.
What?
You said you know what that means, kids, and of course everyone knows that February is Razzie month. Everyone knows that.
And if you don't, get on our level.
Exactly.
So it is Razzie month, which means that we are breaking form. We're going to stay under the Stay Doomed name. So this is still Stay Doomed, and I am still Laura Prince, and that's still Noah Houlihan. And we are still going to talk about things that just plain didn't do all that well.
Yes, it is Razzie month, so every year it is my tradition that I watch the 5 films nominated for Worst Picture. And I have dragged Laura into this well of sadness and grime. And now she also joins me in my quest to have a bad time.
I think these are really fun. This is my second year doing third year.
Third year? Is it your third year?
Yeah, I watched both 50
year.
Shades of Grey movies.
Yes.
So, this is my third year of watching all of the Razzie-nominated movies, or Razzie-nominated Worst Picture movies, because there's a lot of categories and we just don't have time. Mm-hmm. And this week we're doing the Happytime Murders.
Yes, the Happytime Murders. Now, here's something that I end up saying a lot when it comes to a Razzie movie. I always say, this is the movie 43 rule. A movie should not be condemned for being what it promises. So, I would like to start by asking you, before we watched the Happytime Murders, what did you think we were going to see?
A crass puppet comedy.
Yes, I thought it was going to be hard R, gross out humor, comedy. And we kind of get that.
Yeah, I think the marketing of this movie and certain aspects of the script do the movie injustice.
Yes, because I remember I wanted to see this in theaters, and then the reviews came out, and I was like, oh, bummer.
Yeah.
And then I didn't see it until now. And I want to point out to our listeners is we watched this on Amazon Prime, and Amazon Prime listed that the IMDb score is 5.3.
Yes.
But on Amazon, it had 3.5 stars, which I found suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, usually the viewer scores are a little bit more forgiving than the critical scores.
Okay, all right. Plus, I know sometimes, 5 stars, the DVD showed up on time is a common Amazon score.
Yeah, that'll happen. Sometimes it's like, hey, it was a good case. Yeah. I liked the fact that the case was pretty.
Yeah, it worked perfectly in my DVD player. Like that, those pop up every now and then.
Well, sometimes when you buy them used, you kind of get that, good seller, arrived on time, because when you beg them to review, and, it's not a review of the film, necessarily.
Yeah. So, how do you want to jump into this? Do you want to just dive in head first here?
Sure. What were your first impression, first blush? We're not going to do our normal, summarize the whole movie.
My first impression of this was, hey, helicopter shot. Because we start with a helicopter shot, and you can see the puppet driving. And I was like, wow, you could have easily just not shown the driver in this shot. But they went the extra mile to make sure you could see the puppet in a helicopter shot driving.
Right.
And I was like, huh, that's kind of quality. And you really should expect that, because this is a Henson movie.
Yes. This is a Brian Henson movie.
Yes.
Brian is Jim's son.
Yes.
And Brian Henson is well known for pioneering puppet effects. Mm-hmm. The famous bicycle shot in the Muppet movie, Brian Henson.
Okay, that makes sense.
Brian Henson also, if I recall correctly, directed both Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island.
Yes.
So this isn't just like some butt munch off the street coming in and being like, well, I'm gonna do a filthy puppet movie.
It's also interesting to note that this is the first movie he's directed since Muppet Treasure Island. So
Yes.
that's a long time to just kind of be gone.
That's about 22 years.
Yeah.
Now, Happytime Murders has existed in some format for almost a decade.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I heard about this script ages... This movie was in development forever.
Yeah.
And when they first were talking about it, different people were attached to the movie over the years. But it was totally my jam.
Yeah.
Because the central conceit of this film is that there is a TV show called The Happytime Gang, which is like a children's television show.
Like, maybe not just kids.
Like a family show.
Yeah.
Something much like... It seems a little more juvenile than The Muppet Show. Mm-hmm. But maybe something more of like a Muppets Tonight.
Yeah, it seems sitcom-y.
Yes.
Because there's a character...
Alf, maybe, might be tonally.
Yeah, more close to Alf. Because the character, Officer Shenanigans, his tagline is, "You're under arrest for being too hot to handle."
Yeah.
So you wouldn't say that in like a children's show.
Yeah, so it's like a family show.
Yeah, it's a sitcom.
And the actors begin to be killed off.
Yes.
And then a puppet PI and his human partner
Yes.
are on the case. This is the conceit of the movie. This is not necessarily an accurate summary of the movie.
Yes.
But this was the elevator pitch of the film.
Now, when you listen to that, where it's like, it's Muppets that getting killed, and then a Muppet teams with a human to investigate, what film comes to mind?
Wait, repeat that?
It is puppets being killed, and then a puppet and a human team up together to solve crimes. This should invoke Roger Rabbit.
Yes, okay. Sorry, I got hung up on puppet.
Yeah, I understand.
And didn't quite... I get what you mean. It's Eddie Valiant. It's Toons instead. Okay.
Yeah. So I went in expecting this to fully be Roger Rabbit. However, the opening sequence, where I mentioned earlier, where he's driving around, is very close to one of the opening sequences to Bright.
And it's very interesting because some of the themes...
It is very, very similar to Bright.
I got that in the initial establishing, when, like, the world-building scenes at the beginning. Puppets are... It's a little bit like in the Muppet movie, in the 2011 Muppets.
Yeah.
Some people are just Muppets.
Yeah.
And that's just accepted, and that's how the world is. But in the Muppet movie in 2011, it's kind of like, oh, some people are Muppets, and that's okay, because that's a cheerful children's PG movie. In this, puppets are treated as second-class citizens.
Yeah, because another, like, conceit of Roger Rabbit, at least I've always felt this way, is Toons and humans do interact, but not often.
Right.
Like, there's an area close to Toontown where there's some bleed over. Like, I think the feeling you're supposed to get when you see Roger Rabbit is, this is happening in the real world, just not my town.
Right.
This is a Hollywood thing. With this movie and with Bright, it's like, no. These two species, basically, live together. And it's not always great.
Right.
And it does this amazing thing. And I love this about this movie is, it's not going to take time to explain to you how this world works. You're going to learn how it goes along. And you'll probably find it funny. But it's normal to everyone around them.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Which is kind of good fantasy world building, good, like... It's good fantasy, good science fiction world building in a way of not stopping and explaining a lot of it. Mm-hmm. So, everyone's pretty racist toward puppets. That's...
Yes.
I guess it's fantasy racism.
Yeah. They're
Much like Bright.
Yeah, like we just see puppets not being treated well.
Sock is a dessert.
Sock is a slur that they use for them. So yeah, the puppets are second-class citizens.
Absolutely.
And there is a line, something along the lines of,
Look, times have changed. You don't have to sing and dance for the man anymore.
Of course I don't have to. I want to. Because that's what puppets do. Hiya, folks. Oh.
kind of implying, like, them being part of the community is semi-new.
Yeah, I mean, the PI says that to contextualize that. The PI says this to essentially a busker.
Yeah.
An older male puppet who's, like, dancing on the street, begging for change.
Yeah.
And, like, talking about singing and dancing, and the PI is, like, very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
And our PI is named Phil Phillips, because this film is very much a noir.
Yes.
It has a lot of the noir trappings.
Because we have our femme fatale who shows up.
Sandra White,
and she's clearly nothing but trouble.
Yeah, and she's also, I want to point out, very much modeled to look like, say it with me, Jessica Rabbit. The red hair, the very, like, aggressive purple eyeshadow.
Yes, the over-sexuality.
Yeah, I mean, she is very much, to the point where, like, her overt sexuality is a huge part of her character.
Yes.
And that's clearly a Jessica Rabbit influence.
Yes. And she comes to Phil Phillips for help because
She's being blackmailed.
She's being blackmailed. She has a secret. She's a Ima.
I'm a sexual Ima.
What's that?
It means if I'ma get next to it, I'ma gonna fuck it.
And, like, this was the first time we looked at each other like, oh no!
It has some of the other trappings. It's got, like, a good cop, some bad cops, the long-suffering police chief, the sweet secretary, the old flame.
Yes.
It leans really hard into these tropes.
Yes.
The main deviation is that Phil Phillips used to be a police officer, which is not the deviation, but that his former partner was female.
Yes.
That's the main deviation.
Yeah. That is the main deviation.
Connie Edwards, who is the Melissa McCarthy role.
Yes.
Phil Phillips used to be a police officer and was booted off the force in disgrace for reasons we find out later.
Yes.
And Connie Edwards was his partner.
Yeah, before we go so deep into this, there's something I noticed about Connie Edwards.
Yes.
Is one of the things that's constantly happening is she's constantly being mistaken for a man.
Yes.
She also goes by a man's name. Like, her name is Connie Edwards, but everyone calls her Edwards.
I know her name is Connie from the IMDb page.
So, it's very interesting. Like, I wasn't sure what they were trying to prove with this, but they make sure that every character confuses her for a man.
It's kind of an interesting... It's something they do to Melissa McCarthy, it seems like, in these parts, is Melissa McCarthy never really gets to be feminine in a classical sense. They kind of always jump to kind of masculinizing her. Yeah. And you see that in, like, Spy. You see that a little bit in Bridesmaids, where she's, like, the crass bridesmaid.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay, I get you.
And part of it is very
Tammy.
much... I mean, and part of it is very much, like, Hollywood has never quite figured out what to do with a more plus-size actor. We see this a lot with Rebel Wilson as well.
Right.
In that they don't know how to put her as a romantic lead. Isn't It Romantic is about to come out?
Yes.
And that's a movie in which Rebel Wilson is the romantic lead. And I'm, like, intrigued to see that, but also think it's a movie that we could end up watching next year for this.
Yeah, very true. So I need to talk about the scene at the porn shop.
So... Yes, okay.
So, to investigate who's possibly blackmailing Miss White, Phil Phillips goes to a porn shop to try to find some evidence. And, because it's one of these movies and a porn shop needs to be in it.
Right.
He's in the back going through files, and...
because the porn shop owner keeps files of everything everyone has bought.
Yeah.
Which is a thing I found funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's also very, like, detective stories. Like, of course I have all these files, and of course you can see them. Now, there's a loud porno going on in the background, so Phil doesn't hear when someone in a cloak shows up with a shotgun, blows the head off of the store clerk, and one of the members of the Happytime gang, Mr. Bumbles, I think is there?
Oh.
Bumbles. It's definitely Bumbles. I don't know if it's a Mr.
Bumbly Pants.
Bumbly Pants, yes, is there. And finds... he's like freaking out, and he says like, oh, I wish I didn't find this arousing. And then, because he's wearing a trench coat, glitter kind of comes out of it.
Like glitter slime, like the stuff your
Glitter
niece got
slime.
for Christmas.
What do you think that was meant to imply?
I thought it was meant to imply that he was like scared and he peed himself.
Okay, I was wondering if you thought he came, because that's what I thought originally.
He then also like
Drops eggs.
voids his bowels.
Yeah.
Yes.
But this cloaked figure blows the head off of the store clerk, and it's a puppet, so it's like fluff everywhere.
Yeah.
Blows it off to pornographic actors and Mr. Bumbly Pants. And when this happens, I scream, "Whoa!"
Despite the fact that the only human in the shop at the time, nothing's happening to him. The human and the dog.
That's a video.
Oh.
They're not actually there.
Okay, I missed that it was not happening.
But the fact that I had that guttural, like, stomach churning feeling towards what is effectively, a puppet
Yeah.
being killed really shows how effective the film is at this point.
Yeah.
Because, like, it could just be a cheap laugh of, like, look, it's puppets dying. But I did have that motion of, like, oh, damn it.
And the human actors actually do sell it well. When the cops show up, one of the cops walks in, visibly gags and retches.
Yeah.
And it actually does sell the moment really well.
So, like, it actually felt extreme to me.
Yes.
And I was like, that's weird that I have this feeling here.
Yeah, it's, so that's the first murder.
Yes.
Because, Sandra White is being blackmailed, so he's investigating who might be blackmailing her at the porn store, and that's when he runs into the guy. And, that's when he runs into Bumbly Pants, and then everyone is murdered but Phil Phillips because he was in the back and he didn't hear it.
Yes.
And then this is when I start to notice something.
What is that?
When the cops show up, we meet Edwards, and her establishing character moment is that she hates puppets and she's a racist toward puppets. Mm-hmm. And Edwards is played by Melissa McCarthy, who is white.
Yes.
You also see, I have to look up the character's actual name because he's not Stanley Hudson.
He's played by Stanley Hudson from
The Office.
Which is not his real name.
It's not.
I know a lot of people from The Office, they just use their real names.
The actor's name is
Les.
Leslie David Baker, and he plays Lieutenant Banning.
Yes.
I can't promise I won't call him Stanley Hudson.
Yeah.
So, Stanley Hudson, Lieutenant Banning, is compassionate toward Phil Phillips and is kind to him. Mm-hmm. And as everyone who has seen The Office knows, Stanley is black.
Yes.
This sets up something I start to notice in the film of the characters who are played by people of color are always more compassionate than the white characters.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting choice.
It's an interesting choice that's never really, like, they don't draw attention to it either, which I find very interesting, because they could have actually gone way more ham-handed.
No, they keep
don't.
it light, which I think is very well done.
Because later when we meet Larry, who plays Officer Shenanigans, Larry is Phil Phillips' brother.
Yes.
The PI. And Larry is with his girlfriend, or a lady he is seeing.
Yeah.
And she is an Asian American woman. Mm-hmm. So this kind of sets up this, like, interesting racial divide.
Yeah. It's very interesting. And I find Officer Shenanigans to be the most interesting character.
Okay. Officer Shenanigans or Larry?
Larry Phillips. Because since his time on the Happytime gang, he has gotten a new nose.
Yes.
And later on when he's in the hot tub with his girlfriend. First off, I find it fascinating that he's in a hot tub.
Yeah.
Like I
It's
sat there like,
fabric.
how is this happening? Found it utterly fascinating he was in a hot tub. His girlfriend says something like, you used to be so blue. He's like, yeah, but, half a gallon of bleach and here I am. He's like, well, you look better now. Like this whole idea of, and we don't get to spend a lot of time with this character, but he's doing everything in his power to look like a human.
Yeah, I mean, it's evocative of colorism.
Yeah.
Because I was reading about how it's much harder for actors with darker skin, even black actors with lighter skin have an easier time than black actors with darker skin. Amanda Stenberg very famously turned down the role of Shuri in Black Panther because she felt it should go to a darker skinned actress, but the producers had gone to her, and she's fairly light skinned.
It's just, I thought this was very well done, and
So this colorism is very much like a thing that Hollywood actresses, I say actresses because you kind of hear about it more, because female actors end up talking more about body image and appearance than male actors do in interviews.
I wish there had been a line in it where he was the only one still working.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the only one that still has his life together out of the Happytime gang.
Yeah, he's the only one who, his life hasn't gone down a dark place.
But, I wish he had said something like, it's opened up a lot of parts for me.
Yeah.
And I watched this twice. I had to watch this again. For podcast reasons. And there's a line, because they go through every member of the Happytime gang.
Right.
Which is Mr. Bumblypants,
Yes.
which is the bunny, Officer Shenanigans, Jenny, who's the human,
Yes.
and that is Elizabeth Banks. There's a pair of neighbors, whose names I forget, Goober, the handyman,
Yes.
and the purple fellow.
The purple fellow. I'm trying to see if
I forget what his name is. In any case, the important thing... Lloyd. They're watching a cast party, him and his girlfriend in the hot tub, and the two neighbor characters are making out. And Larry says...
Ooh, Ezra and Kara! Those two are cousins. They're married with kids now.
And then they just move on. And I realize there are very few wasted lines of dialogue in this movie.
Right.
Everything that is being said is pretty important to the plot of this puppet murder movie.
Yeah, I mean, that whole little sequence, nothing is wasted.
Yeah.
In that, the video of the cast party we see is important, because then we establish that Edwards used to be Phil's partner, and they come in, and they're like...
Oh, here comes my brother with his partner.
Freeze, police! We've had a lot of complaints regarding this party.
That there's not enough tequila!
I'm sexy and I'm
They both pull out tequila and start taking shots. So this established Edwards, to this point, has been this racist, cruel character. And she and Phillips hate one another. And this shows this time where they, enjoyed each other's company and were outright friends.
Yeah.
And then it also establishes that Phil used to be romantically involved with Jenny, because we see them kiss.
Yeah. Yeah, they make out, and we get a lot of plot in this just one moment, and then this cloaked figure returns and releases the dogs.
Literal, adorable puppies.
Yeah, they're very cute. It's not Rottweilers or anything. They're like
a French bulldog.
French bulldog, and they run in and they rip Larry apart
While his girlfriend's making margaritas, so she doesn't hear because she's running the blender.
Ice. Yeah, and he gets ripped to shreds and he dies. And now this is the second member of the Happytime gang, and Larry shows up distraught.
Phil shows up.
I'm sorry, Phil shows up distraught, and Stanley stops him and says, this is not how you want to remember Larry, which is sucks any humor out of this scene.
Yeah, it's a very compassionate.
It's very real.
Yeah.
And then here comes Officer Edward, who says, "Ooh, someone had a piñata party here." And Larry attacks her and throws her in the hot tub. And
With the remains of his brother.
With the remains of his brother. And she bites his penis.
Yes. A really important plot point that we should mention.
Please.
Larry and Phil have lunch, and they talk about the Happytime gang has gotten a $10 million syndication deal.
Yes.
To be split among the cast members. Mm-hmm. And if a cast member dies, it goes to their significant other, or their spouse.
Yes.
And if
they don't have a spouse,
it goes back into the pot.
Yes, so it just gets split amongst the remaining members.
Which is now providing a motive for this is why we start thinking about these as murders and not horrific accidents.
Yes.
Because now 2 members of the Happytime gang have been brutally murdered.
Yes. And I do want to take a time out here because they were each going to get $1.4 million, basically.
Yes.
Something like that. 1.4, some other numbers. If one of them died, that would go up to 1.6 million.
Right.
That doesn't seem like enough money to kill someone.
Except when you establish how down and out everyone but Larry is, you can kind of almost understand, like, $200,000 is people have killed for much less.
Well, what I wanted to ask is, when I heard $10 million, I was like, that is a ridiculously low number.
Yes.
Like, for something that's supposedly a hit show, for you to be waiting to get $10 million to be spread amongst, 7 people. I mean, like, the cast of Friends were making that an episode.
Yeah, I mean, the cast of The Big Bang Theory makes that an episode.
Yeah. So I thought it was very interesting that they picked kind of a ridiculously low number, considering.
I sort of thought we were going to hear that Jenny was not involved in the deal.
Jenny was my number one suspect at this point.
Yeah, because, well, I thought we were going to find out that actually Jenny had a $10 million deal alone.
Yeah.
I thought at this point that Jenny, who's the human played by Elizabeth Banks, was going to be independent of this. Mm-hmm. So then they're Lieutenant Banning, almost called him Lieutenant Hudson. Lieutenant Banning assigned Edwards and Phil Phillips to work together.
Yes.
Because he believes Phillips that these are murders. Mm-hmm. So he kind of forces Edwards, and he brings Phillips on as a consultant.
Yes.
Which is a way to get around the fact that he's no longer a police officer.
Yes. They end up splitting up so that because... first...
We have the scene with the producer.
Oh, okay.
He's the producer behind the $10 million deal.
Yes, which is...
Michael McDonald.
Michael McDonald.
There's a lot of, names in this movie.
Yeah.
A lot of, hey, that dude, in this movie.
He is a horrible puppet racist.
Yes, and Edwards agrees with him. But I start to get the feeling Edwards is agreeing with him to get him to talk.
Yes, which is clear because Edwards tries to get Phil to, like, steal things, like important documents, while he's distracted, talking about, he says something about getting a children's hospital destroyed so he could have an ocean view.
Yes.
Like, he's a terrible person. And then he says something about, I have puppet servants at home. They get really uppity if I don't let them dance. And Phil just knocks him out because he's an ass. And, like, it's uncomfortable to hear this, like, very racist talk, very cavalierly done.
I mean, it reminds me very strongly of minstrelsy.
Yes.
Of, like, the stereotype of the, like, lazy, carefree black man that used to be in, like, the late 19th, early 20th centuries, that they just want to sing and dance. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of where blackface grew from. Yeah. Was that, like, stereotype.
So they, like,
this movie's a little bit smarter than it was marketed as.
It's very smart. So they end up then going to check on Leroy. Was that his name?
Lloyd.
Lloyd. They go check on Lloyd. Lloyd is amongst criminals. Mm-hmm. And they don't like Edwards because she's human. And Phil then reveals that Edwards has a puppet liver.
Yes.
As a result, she can handle puppet drugs, which are just sugar.
Yeah, it's a line of rock candy, because puns.
Yeah, so, like, we find out that drugs in the puppet world are like bottles of maple syrup.
Yeah.
And they just snort pure sugar.
Yeah. And can handle it in much stronger doses than humans can.
Yes, but because of Edward's Muppet liver, she can handle it.
Puppet. They never, ever...
They never say
use
Muppet.
the word Muppet.
You're right. I'm sorry. Excuse my slip of the tongue.
Yeah, I don't want it to cloud some of the points to be like, oh, it's a Muppet movie.
Yeah, it is not.
They're very adamant it's not.
Yes.
So she snorts like a lot of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And passes out momentarily, and they're like, oh, sorry about your dead friend, Phillips. And then she snaps back crazy high.
Yeah. So she's out of her mind.
And then we find out she is a sugar fiend.
Yeah, she's got an addiction. Meanwhile, Phil's trying to talk to Lloyd and, make sure he's okay. Tries to, kind of figure out if he's involved. And then drive-by shooting. We lose Lloyd.
We lose Lloyd, and essentially, we lose Lloyd and everyone else in the scene, just about.
Yeah. There is a little scene where Edwards is totally messed up on sugar, and Phil says something like, she has a cold, she took some cold medicine.
She's covers for banning.
Yeah.
Because she's high out of her mind when banning shows up.
Mm-hmm. So, it's a nice little character moment. They then need to split up. So they're not going after the neighbors because they're out of their jurisdiction. They live in Lancaster.
Right. Oh, the other thing is, a big important part of that scene to me.
Yeah.
Was Edwards defending the female puppets.
Oh yeah, that's an awesome scene.
Because after she does the drugs and they've kind of accepted her into the fold and she's playing cards with them, Junkyard, who is a giant dog, mm-hmm. refers to several female characters, especially a particular one he is clearly with, as a bitch.
Right.
Which is kind of a play because he's a literal...
He's a dog.
He's a puppet dog. Mm-hmm. And Edwards does not appreciate that word. And sort of strong arms Junkyard into apologizing to Roxy.
Get me some more lean. Motherfucking bitch.
She never really cared for that word, if you must know.
You one crazy fucking bitch.
Bitches be crazy.
Bitches be crazy, right? Am I right? I mean, that guy knows.
Yeah, you're really nailing my views on women.
Right? And we know women love you.
They do not. They decline.
Here's the thing, though. Would a crazy fucking bitch do this? Maybe. But a crazy bitch would do this. You apologize to Roxy and all the other fine ladies here tonight for your disparaging remarks.
Yeah, Junkyard.
I'm sorry, bitches.
Better tone, same shitty words. Let's try it again.
I'm sorry, beautiful ladies.
Oh, how does that feel, Roxy?
Better.
I feel better.
Oh, you feel better too. Oh, but not really our goal.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a really good character moment for Edwards, because it kind of shows that she defends the other female characters despite her prejudices toward puppets.
Yes. I also took it as them saying, yeah, it's a dog using the word bitch, so you could make the argument that they're saying, yeah, it's part of how he was raised, was around that word, that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, this movie's really smart.
Yeah, the movie handles it. I wish it was a little bit smarter.
Really? I think that's its downfall. I think people were not expecting an intelligent film.
I disagree, but we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to this because there's a point where I want to bring this up, and we're almost there.
Okay. So then we got to split up, and right.
I'm trying to think if this is where. Yes, this is where we split up.
So Phil goes and talks to Jenny.
No, before this.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have to meet Miss White again.
Yes, and this is actually a scene I really need to address.
Okay.
Miss White comes in again, and Phillips has kind of forgotten about her. Which is fine, because so did the audience.
Yeah, that's kind of the point.
Like, the blackmailing is very much the B-plot. Mm-hmm. And then he said, like, Sandra says, this time the blackmailer sent me a picture. And it's her with Jenny, who we have seen before now. So, like, we know this is Jenny.
Yes.
And they, there's kind of a scene where things escalate and Phil Phillips and Sandra White have sex. I think this scene kills this movie.
Really?
Because they put this scene in the trailer.
Oh, no, I do remember that scene.
They put the scene where Phillips ejaculates a ridiculous amount of silly string in the trailer, and I think that scene being in the trailer is what made people decide this movie was going to be terrible. Mm-hmm. I think the movie is 500% better if they had cut that scene down by 75%.
It turns out, without giving it away yet, they need to have sex for the plot.
Yes. Oh, I'm not saying they shouldn't have sex.
So it is a ridiculous thing. I would like to argue that you are right that this scene shouldn't have been in the trailer, because it sets the movie to be this sex, crime, comedy, like dirty, filthy, like silly movie. Like, I think people who saw that trailer thought, we're about to go watch American Pie with puppets. And then when they sat down, they're like, oh, social commentary? This is not what I'm here for. Where are my goddamn jokes?
See, I disagree in that I don't think I think the people who went in for that movie might not quite be smart enough to get the social commentary.
Exactly. To them, they're just waiting for jokes that never come.
But they're not going, social commentary. They're just going, where are jokes?
Exactly.
So I think including the sequence in the trailer, and I do think the ejaculation scene should have been 75% shorter. It's not as funny as the movie seems to think it is. Like, it's funny that it's silly string.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be that long. And I think the fact that was in the trailer, and along with Goofer's conversation with Edwards, those are the two scenes I remember being in the trailer.
Yes.
If they had marketed it more on the noir side, I think this film would have been received better and done better.
I agree completely.
So, yeah, even in my notes it says, puppets come silly string. It's a lot. We also have to address a supporting character who we haven't discussed yet, who kind of almost makes this scene work.
Oh,
and that is Maya Rudolph, who plays Bubbles.
Bubbles, which I thought it was very odd that Phil Phillips has the most human name and the secretary has the most puppety name.
Yeah, I mean, Maya Rudolph must have watched Little Shop of Horrors 36 times a day for this film, because she's essentially Audrey from... Yeah. She's got the same hair, kind of a similar accent to Ellen Greene in Little Shop of Horrors, and very similar mannerisms.
Yeah.
And she is the kindly secretary to Phil Phillips, who clearly has a thing for him.
Yeah. Sees past all of his flaws and is always there to clean up the messes.
In this case, like a really, really literal mess. Mm-hmm. And we also, in this moment, meet Agent Campbell, who is played by Joel McHale.
Yes, from the FBI, because now Phil Phillips is the top suspect in this.
Because he's been at the scene of every crime except for that of his brother, where he
Yes.
showed up pretty quickly.
Yes.
So, Joel McHale's character, Agent Campbell, is also a white person who is puppet racist.
Yes, quite puppet racist.
So that these are two important characters that are kind of established in this scene. Bubbles has been established before,
But this is where you get to know who she is.
and this is the part where you really need to we really need to think about her, because her reaction shots for some of this almost make this scene work.
Hilarious.
Yeah,
I liked this scene. I thought it was funny. I don't think it's like a masterpiece or anything, but like for what it was, yeah, it gives me a giggle.
yeah, I have no problem with puppet sex scenes. You can do one and win a Tony.
Yeah,
You can do one and win a bunch of Tonys.
yeah,
But I think the over-the-top graphic nature of it, like the bodily fluids nature of it, is what makes it different than Team America, what makes it different. And I think it's that viscerality that you were talking about with the violence in a sexual...
Because while I was watching that scene, the thought I had in my brain was, this is not what they meant by Muppet sex and violence. Because that was the original name for the Muppet Show.
That was, that was the unaired pilot.
Yeah, so like this is puppets with the violence and sex turned up even further.
Yeah, I mean, this is up to 11.
Yeah, so like Muppet sex and violence was pushing the envelope, and now he's pushing the envelope as well.
I think that this movie also might have done a little better if it had come much closer on the heels of Avenue Q. If this movie had come out in 2008 when we first started hearing about it. Then it would have been only about 4 or 5 years after Avenue Q, and I think that would have helped it more. But now, Avenue Q just celebrated its 15th anniversary, which, now I feel old, because I saw that first run on Broadway with the original cast. I'm old. And it was really edgy at the time.
Yeah.
But now, 15 years down the line, there's a high school version.
Yeah.
Community theaters do Avenue Q. So, a lot of that edge has been filed off because, puppet sex has been in pop culture for... Team America World Police is, at this point, 15 years old.
Yeah, 2001?
2004.
All right.
Ironically, that actually came out right about when Avenue Q did.
Avenue Q came out.
So they kind of nailed the timing significantly more.
Yeah. I will say this. I think there's a scene that kills this movie. I do not think this is it.
Okay.
I will let you know when it shows up.
Absolutely.
So now we have to split up.
Yes.
We have Phil Phillips goes and talks to Jenny, who's an old flame, and
she's a stripper because film noir, of course, she is some variant of a sex worker.
yes, they show the picture that he got from Miss White. She doesn't remember her, and Phil says something like, "Why are you so cavalier? Everyone's dead."
Yeah,
and she's like, "I'm just trying not to think about it." Jeez, and they kind of rekindle that flame.
Yeah,
between
the
them.
spark between them. We establish how much he cares about her.
Yeah.
And we establish... they kiss.
Yeah, they share... The line is...
Jenny, I'm poison. I poisoned me and you. I poisoned my career. Hell, I poisoned every good puppet's chance of ever becoming a cop.
That wasn't your fault.
Doesn't matter. I still feel sick about it every goddamn day.
Every poison has an antidote.
And then they kiss, and I was like, "Oh, that's nice." And then she gets into her car, starts the engine, and it explodes, and I audibly gasp. I was like, "Oh, Jenny."
I had that moment where I was like, huh. Seems like a waste of Elizabeth Banks.
Yeah, what a waste of Elizabeth Banks. That being said, Michael McDonald was in this movie for 7 minutes.
Yeah,
Joel McHale might only be in this movie for 7 minutes.
I really like Elizabeth Banks as an actress, and I actually like her a lot as a director, because see also movie 43.
Yes.
So I was really like, oh, Elizabeth Banks, no! More because I tend to like her as a performer, and I wanted to see more of her.
Mm-hmm.
And then Edwards finds Goofer, who is the handyman, in, like, a puppet flop house.
Yeah, totally messed up on sugar. And
this is another sequence that should not have been in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Goofer is only in this movie for about 3 minutes.
Yeah,
and
this is his entire scene.
And he is very much overrepresented in the trailer, propositioning Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
And gendered propositioning, in that, again, we have the misgendering of Edwards, in that Goofer repeatedly offers to suck Edwards' dick.
Yes.
I think that's the first time I've said anything objectionable on the show.
Probably. I thought it was very weird that she says, do you want me to go for my gun? And he says, no, unless you're talking about your penis. It's Wiener in the trailer.
And Wiener is funnier?
I think it's funnier.
Yeah, like, the rules of, even though it actually has fewer stop plosives,
yeah,
Wiener is funnier.
Well, it's like, he used a clinical term. You couldn't use that on television? You can't say penis on television?
Yeah.
So I just thought that took me out of it.
Yeah, but I disliked it because it was also a scene that was just kind of like crass for the sake of being crass, and it makes more sense in context.
Yeah.
When we learn that Goofer is down on his luck, a drug addict, and very desperate for his next fix, it's much sadder in context.
Yes.
But in the marketing, it's not really... marketing, it's taken out of context, and it's just kind of gross.
Yeah.
The marketing kills this movie. I'm strongly of the opinion that you could recut this trailer and sell this movie much more efficiently.
I agree completely. And then we do get a bit of a clue from Goober. Mm-hmm. Because Goober just starts talking about the wife.
Yeah, he snaps in and out of lucidity.
Mm-hmm. And we're running out of suspects because everyone's dead.
We're running out of Happytime gang.
So basically at this point I'm thinking, it's probably not Goober because he's...
too messed up to do anything.
He's too messed up. It could either be Goober has a wife, it could be one of the dead cast members has a wife, or it could be the couple that we know.
At this point, I also kind of had the thought of, like, Larry's girlfriend.
Okay.
Because she was a character we met, and it's not uncommon in murder mysteries to have that, like, one-scene wonder, and then... I embarrassed myself horrifically once. I saw Curtains on Broadway. And I was a teenage...
Look, I'm Laura. I go to Broadway. I see all the shows first run with the original cast.
This is, like, literally, like, 2 of the only shows I saw first run with the original cast.
Yeah, but they both came up during this podcast.
Hashtag humble brag. Yeah, when my mommy was paying for my tickets, I went to see more Broadway shows.
Right.
When I was a teenager. And I was a teenager, so I stage doored, which I don't do anymore because now I kind of see the creepy aspects of it. And the guy who was the killer in Curtains, I talked to him after the show and I was like, I knew it was you. You had a really small part and you were like in 2 scenes and you came out in the end and you killed everybody. So I told a Broadway actor to his face, you had a really small part and you were not important.
Nice.
So
nice. He was Lin-Manuel Miranda.
No! Oh my God, don't put that into the universe. No, every stage door story I have involves me humiliating myself in some fashion. So that's the other reason I don't stage door anymore. Not because I grew out of it as much
bad
as
at it.
I humiliate myself.
But
that's why I thought it was the girlfriend.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. That's good. That's good sleuthing. So then...
Go tell her that to her face now.
Yeah. The cops show up when the car explodes, and they see Phil. So Phil runs away and goes to the only place he thinks he can hide, which is Edward's apartment.
Which is essentially a slightly nicer version of a puppet flophouse.
Yeah, she's totally hooked on sugar as well. She's blacked out. So Phil cleans and falls asleep. And then we see the infamous event.
We see what got him thrown off the force.
Yes. We see a puppet had a gun to Edward's head, and they were begging, and Edwards is begging Phil to take the shot. And before, we found out that Edwards had testified that Phil had missed on purpose.
After we find out that Phil was an expert marksman.
Yeah, he had missed on purpose because he didn't shoot puppets. But we're now seeing what really happened, and Phil took the shot, and he just happened to miss. And, like, it's very close, and they do a good job, like, showing the bullet.
They do, like, the slow-motion bullet time.
And it hits a concrete pillar, the bullet ricochets, and kills a man in front of his purple-haired daughter.
Yeah, he kills a adult male puppet in front of his puppet daughter.
And it's legitimately horrifying.
Yeah, the little girl is screaming, like, Daddy, wake up.
Mm-hmm. And then Edwards goes for the gun, and this criminal puppet shoots Edwards in the stomach. And Edwards, before she, like, passes out, kills this criminal. Like, it's legitimate. There's no gags in this part.
No.
It's legitimately horrible.
Yeah, and then, like, Phillips rushes Edwards to the nearest hospital, which happens to be a puppet hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor tries to turn Edwards away because she's a human and they don't help her.
Mm-hmm.
And Phillips pulls a gun on the doctor and says, like, you'll save her or die trying.
Mm-hmm. And
that's when I realized the puppet liver wasn't a joke.
Yeah.
Because I actually thought it was a gag in the initial scene.
It's a puppet liver. And I think this is my second place for scenes that might have killed this movie for audiences. Because there are no gags. This is a really horrific scene telling part of this story in this world that feels very real at this point.
Yeah.
Like, people who went to see the Happytime Murders were leaning more towards the happy time and not so much on the murders.
Right.
So, like, I think a lot of people feel like, this isn't what I'm here for.
Yeah, like
I don't want this character moment.
Like, to go back to Avenue Q a little bit, because I think Avenue Q kind of needs to be brought up as the other big adult puppet-related media. Avenue Q subverts the Sesame Street format, but always subverts it for laughs.
Yeah.
Even the things that are sadder or more realistic, like a breakup and whatnot, and even like racism toward monsters in that case, they're consistently played more for laughs, and even the more realistic things are pretty low stakes. There's never a life or death moment. There's never anything addressing institutional racism or police brutality the way this movie addresses.
Yeah.
Those, this is the weirdest, most cerebral puppet conversation I've had in at least a year. But
it's only been a year for a month.
No, I meant at least a 12-month year.
Oh. Okay.
But this addresses these higher stakes issues: police brutality, murder, institutional racism. Where Avenue Q is like commitment issues, and like casual racism, more of like the microaggression type of racism. So Avenue Q is very funny because it stays very low stakes. Happytime Murders goes for higher stakes, and I think it, in some ways, the tonal shifts don't quite nail it. And we'll talk about that a little more at the end when we're like...
I got some more stuff to say along those lines.
Yeah, when we get to the ending.
I think I want to speed up what we're talking about a little bit. Goober dies. They find him in the ocean.
Yeah.
He's dead, so we have to go to...
the desert.
And because all that's left are the cousins that are married.
And we do have an important character moment here.
Yes.
When they get out of the car, Edwards has kept Phillips's old flak jacket that says police. And she calls him partner.
Yeah. So, like, they're really growing as a team. They go inside and they hear screams. And it's these deformed children because they're cousins. And if you had forgotten that, because that line was an hour ago, this is a really confusing moment.
Yeah, so we have... And when you say nothing is wasted, I do feel like the sequence is, like... Not the sequence, but the fact that they were an incestuous marriage and have two puppet inbred children together. Mm-hmm. The puppet inbred children don't really factor in very much.
It felt a little unnecessary, but
if they were more important to the plot and more important to the payoff, but really it felt like they were like, look, puppet incest. This is for adults.
I didn't feel like that at all. I felt like it just made it scary. Because, there's a scene where Edward walks inside and they see the backs of these children's heads, and she says, "Where's your mommy and daddy?" They turn around, they're disformed, and one of them just screams. And I was literally like, oh no. I thought it made it more intense, which is not what this movie needed at this point, was to turn the volume up on the intensity.
To me, it was evocative of, there's an infamous X-Files episode called
Home. Yes, I thought of Home as well.
Yeah. Well, because you and I are fascinated by banned media.
Yeah.
And difficult media. That's kind of where this show started from.
Yeah.
Is lost media, banned media. And the episode Home was very famously banned from syndication and was not re-aired for almost a decade because of its disturbing subject matter. And it hinges on products of incest who are deformed.
Yeah, I definitely don't get a feeling of puppet incest. I definitely feel like, oh god, they're monsters.
And this idea of why do these two puppets end, what we don't spend much time with these two characters at all.
Yeah.
But you kind of get this idea of what happened?
Yeah.
Kind of what happened. You almost wonder what happened on the set of the Happytime Gang that drove everybody but Larry into these horrific situations.
Yeah. It's creepy. But I have to talk about this scene now.
Yes.
They're like, Phil's like, what happened? And whispers this to Edwards. And Edwards is like, you don't want to go in there. We're going to call child services. And Phil goes, what? I can't hear you. It's like, what about Cinnamon? They keep misunderstanding each other because they're whispering. What was your thought on this scene?
My thought is that they don't know where the killer is.
Right.
They know that the killer is likely on their way.
Right.
If they haven't been there yet. So, you don't want to announce yourselves. Mm-hmm. This is also clearly meant to be this, sort of stereotypical, redneck hillbilly situation. Mm-hmm. So I thought that, this was going to be, culty.
Right. I'm talking specifically about the bit where they can't understand each other because they're whispering.
I thought it felt a little Mel Brooksy.
Okay.
And I thought it was kind of dumb.
I feel like this was unintentional, but what I got out of this was puppets can't read lips because they don't have lips.
That's pretty funny.
So, of course, if you whisper to a puppet, they're not going to know what you're saying. And if you're a puppet whispering to a human, they're not going to know what you're saying because you don't have lips.
Huh.
So I thought it was brilliant. And then at that moment, you're like, this is dumb. And I was like, I might be drawing too much out of this.
Yeah, I kind of felt like it was a pacing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Of they needed to add a little more time to the scene to ratchet up the tension.
Right.
Because then they find the kissing cousins dead in bed together.
Yeah, so now the entire Happytime Gang is dead.
Yeah.
And Phil walks out and is arrested by Joel McHale.
Yeah, it is a standoff, because obviously it's not really a genius thing to be like, well, there's only 2 surviving members left. If Phillips is the killer, he'd be going. And Phillips does kind of have this idea of, a motive of members of the Happytime Gang. No one knows he rekindled his relationship with Jenny right before she died.
Right.
I think it's kind of established that he doesn't have a great relationship with Larry. They're brothers and they loved each other, but they don't have a great relationship. Yeah. They do a thing that's my pet peeve. We were talking about this when the movie was airing. My pet peeve of they call each other, one of them calls the other little brother.
Yeah.
And I always think there's better ways to establish siblings then, hello, brother.
Yes. Hello, brother of an older age than I am.
Yeah, I always find that to be, like, kind of slightly bad writing.
Yeah. So they arrest him, and they have a witness to give it away.
And who is it?
It's Mrs. White.
Yeah, it's Sandra White, who, at this point, has told Edwards that Phillips was having an affair with her and that she was married to Jenny. Mm-hmm. And Phillips obviously had an affair with her that Campbell saw.
Yeah.
Because Campbell was in the office and literally saw them in the act.
Yes.
There's no denying that. And this is when I figured out the ending.
Yeah. Well, she also reveals that she's married to...
I said that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said, and she's married to Jenny.
You said it fast and I missed it.
Sorry. She says she's married to Jenny. She says she's having... And she's framing Phillips. And this is when I realize who Sandra is.
Yes.
She also does a basic attraction gag where we see that her pubic hair does not match
Her
red hair.
Yes.
Her pubic hair is purple. Mm-hmm. Like the purple-haired little girl whose father Phillips killed.
Yeah. So Lara figures it out immediately.
And I yell it because I wanted to make sure that everybody knew.
Yes, our upstairs neighbors are aware, and...
Oof. The things they have heard me shout in
Yeah.
reference to television shows. So we have a sequence where Campbell and Edwards have a confrontation. Mm-hmm. Where Edwards tries to clear Phillips's name, and Campbell accuses her of being favorable toward puppets because of her liver.
Yes.
And then we have a scene with the surprise hero of the film.
Yes, Bubbles.
Bubbles picks Edwards' locks, establishing that everyone breaks into Edwards' apartment. Mm-hmm. And Bubbles pleads with Edwards, saying, like, we're the only two people who can save Phillips.
Yes. They then go on a wild, like, misadventure. Like, it's just the two of them, and this is where they get to do improv.
Yeah.
Because they're both just very silly and funny as they search through the apartment.
Yeah, this is very madcap, silly.
Yeah. And they find all this evidence of how... I always forget her first name. Sandra had planned everything out. Like, marked off everyone she was going to kill. There's pictures of Phil's with Phil's eyes ripped out.
That say die on them.
Say die.
It's the stereotypical room full of crazy.
Yes. But there's also a tape recorder that says, play me. And Bubbles plays it, and it's a tape that says, ka-fucking boom. And all the evidence goes up in a fire.
Yeah. It's a trap. It's like it's booby-trapped so that it destroys all the evidence and ostensibly keeps Sandra from...
So, Edwards saw the evidence, can't prove Phil's innocence, so we have to get him out. So, Edwards shoots him, and they escape in an ambulance.
Yes.
And they're heading to the airport because they want to try to catch Sandra before she leaves.
Yes.
Phil says he's going to do it alone, handcuffs Edwards to the steering wheel of the ambulance, goes in to catch Sandra, and just as he apologizes for killing her father, says it was an accident, says he lives with that guilt, and that's not good enough for Sandra and her wife.
Yes.
Because now it turns out Jenny was alive and set up Phil along with Sandra. And I think this is kind of dumb.
I mean, it is very noir that the old flame...
It is, but like a single line of dialogue about how she doesn't like Phil or something that Phil did to her that ruined her life would have been great. And like that reveal happens. Sandra says, like, I think the reveal happens, and then in 4 lines it's, can't you see that she's manipulating you? Shoot him, honey. And then Jenny goes, can't we just leave him alive? I mean, we're pretty much scot-free. And Sandra hits her with a briefcase and says, I want a divorce. Like, that twist lasts 3 lines before it's disposed of.
Yeah.
So that's when I was just kind of like, unnecessary and could have been done better.
Absolutely.
Though, credits to the movie, it explains why when he talks to Jenny, she's very cavalier. She actually doesn't have reason to be afraid. She's planning this.
Yeah, she's in on the, she's in on her own attempted murder. She's in on the faking of her own death. So she's chill because she's not actually in any danger.
Yes. So, they're a team of people show up.
Yes.
I don't know who these people are. But they're going to throw Phil into a jet engine.
The stereotypical heavies.
Yeah, the henchmen show up. And Edwards rips off the the driving wheel. Steering wheel. And saves Phillips. And they're going to go bust Sandra. And wouldn't you know it, Sandra gets a gun to Edwards' head. And Phil has to take a shot to save her life.
Yeah, which is, pretty classic cop movie, action movie trope.
Yeah. And this time, he makes the shot.
Yes.
And then they go super happy ending.
Yeah. We don't really see what happens to Jenny.
Yeah,
ostensibly,
Jenny vanishes into the ether.
I mean, Jenny's ostensibly arrested.
Yeah.
Because she's an accessory in all of this, and really the only living culprit. But we never really get a motive for Jenny.
Yeah.
Outside of being married to Sandra.
Yeah.
So, Lieutenant Banning is super happy that Phillips is cleared.
Yep.
Super happy that Phillips has solved the murders.
Yeah.
And he has the code that puppets can no longer be cops. Because when Phillips fails to kill the puppet criminal, all
puppets are forbidden to be cops.
Which is very, again, that institutional racism. That's something that you could see happening with, say, like a Muslim person.
Yeah.
Or a trans person nowadays.
Yeah. And, like, at the time, I was like, this kind of feels like too super of an ending. Like, yay, everyone's friends, Phil's a cop again. He changed the laws of the world with this. But we super needed it based on what happened in this film.
Yeah, he and Edwards are partners again. He asks Bubbles on a date and she is elated. And they make fun of Campbell real bad.
Yes.
In like a scene that's very obviously like kind of improvised and very silly and just making fun of Joel McHale.
Yeah, and Joel McHale leaves in a huff.
Yeah, because he's been proven wrong and...
Here's the scene that I think kills this movie.
Okay.
And because it's also being shown right here. The scene that I think kills this movie is when Melissa McCarthy and Raya Rudolph find the evidence.
Okay.
Because I said earlier that there's very few wasted lines of dialogue in this. Because they tell a very tight story. But Melissa McCarthy is known for her improv riffing loose attitude. When it switches to this like loosey-goosey mode,
yeah,
where we're no longer pushing the story forward and just kind of wackiness has happened, it's a mood whiplash. I honestly believe if this was more like Airplane, where you didn't even cast comedians, you cast like serious actors and told everyone, play it straight, this movie would be amazing.
The sequence with Maya Rudolph and Melissa McCarthy feels a little bit... It's got that Family Guy-esque awkward comedy that the rest of the film doesn't have. The only sequences that have that too long joke awkward comedy are that and the puppet ejaculation scene.
Yeah.
Which also doesn't work that well.
And like,
because the scene where they're approaching the door, and it takes so long for them to approach the door because like Maya Rudolph is making a big show of hiding behind Edwards, and Edwards is trying to get through, and it's these kind of like more frat packy sequences, and they don't fit with how tight the rest of the story has felt.
Yeah. I think this movie could have been phenomenal if it was humans are not funny, ever. Humans are never funny. Puppets are funny by accident. Like, that's how they are.
Yeah, that would blend into that stereotype that they're facing.
Because, like, even if you did it that way, you wouldn't even have to get rid of that sex scene. Because it could just be like, that's how puppets come. It's a gallon of silly string every time.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. If they made the movie like that, it would have been phenomenal.
Well, the thing is, that might be the case with puppets, but there's no other puppets in that scene outside of Phillips and Sandra. If Bubbles had been a puppet receptionist, it might have worked a little better. If she had been a puppet,
Maybe.
Because then she could have been that world building.
Yeah.
She could have been that, like, no, that's normal.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the scene with Bubbles and Edwards would have worked better if Bubbles had been a puppet.
Yeah, okay, I'm definitely there. But, like, I think the kind of, like, interracial couple at the end, because it's a puppet and a human, is kind of important to the story.
I do and I don't.
Okay.
Because I think you could also have that be with the partnership with Edwards and Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that needs to necessarily have been the romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already actually seen a positive puppet-human relationship because Larry's girlfriend actually does care about him.
Yeah.
So we don't have this, like, all puppet-human relationships are bad.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Sandra and we really can just deduce that Jenny is bad in relationships.
Yeah.
Because her relationship with Sandra is bad, and her relationship... Well, she might have loved Sandra.
Right.
It's kind of like her relationship with Phillips was bad, and then Sandra turns on her in her relationship.
Okay.
So I'm not sold on the idea that Bubbles has to be human to sell the relationship aspect.
I just kind of think it's nice.
Yeah,
is where I'm going with this.
I think if Maya Rudolph and Melissa McCarthy had tighter, had made that scene a little tighter when they find all the evidence, I'd agree with you. But I kind of think the same beats would have worked a little better if Bubbles had been a puppet. Like, they could have kept that scene very similar to how it was.
Yeah. Because that's the scene that I think kills the movie, and it's because there's no puppets in it.
Yeah, I disagree that it kills the movie. Because when I saw it, I didn't feel like it killed the movie. I thought the marketing...
Yeah, when I say it kills the movie, I'm saying it exemplifies what's wrong with the film.
Okay.
But yeah, I definitely think the marketing's a major problem and things like that. And I'm going to go off. I'm going to do it right now.
All right.
This is a stay tuned from me. I love this movie. I think it's great. I think it's smart. I think it's very well done. And this is the best Razzie film I've ever seen. We saw Action Point in theaters.
We did.
This movie is not worse than Action Point.
Oh, this movie's considerably better than
It's
Action Point.
It's way better than Action Point. For them to tell me that this movie is worse than 50 Shades 3 blows my mind. I think this movie is very well done, and I think I could see why people would have like, oh, it's gross and crass and all this other stuff. If you took this plot, you removed all the puppets and made them humans, it's no grittier than the film 8mm.
Right.
Like, this is what that genre is. And they're doing it with puppets. That's the point.
It's noir.
Yeah. So it might not be what they promised because you kind of thought it would be funnier. But if they marketed it as that, like, that's clearly what they were going for. And they did that amazingly.
Yeah, I mean...
Caveat, I also really like the movie Bright.
Yeah, I would say this film is flawed. I would not say this is a great movie. But I would say this is a good movie. Mm-hmm. And I would say this kind of has this idea... This might turn out to be a cult hit in 5 years.
I certainly hope so.
This is a movie I could absolutely see finding an audience.
Mm-hmm. When this hits cable and they do have to censor it a bit, I think it'll get more eyes on it.
I agree. I do think if you chop down the ejaculation scene a little bit, And if you aren't marketing it on Goofers,
Yeah.
very brief appearance, I think that this trailer killed this film.
I think that's the biggest problem. It is by no means the worst movie of the year.
Because we're going to be thinking about what makes a Razzie movie a lot this month.
Yeah.
Because we were actually really blindsided by a lot of the Razzie nominees this year. Because obviously we've been discussing what we think will get Razzie nominations since, like, November, December.
Yeah.
I went to the dentist, and while I was, like, getting my teeth cleaned, I was thinking about when all of the Razzie movies in 2018, or 2017, the 2018 nominees, had come out, and I was like, this was, like, in September, and I was like, oh my god, all the nominees have come out already. So I was, like, really thinking, like, what's gonna be? And I was thinking about I Feel Pretty.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Action Point.
50 Shades, of course.
Yeah, we thought that was a shoo-in, just
Yeah.
because we thought they'd go for the whole trilogy.
Yeah. Romeo and Juliet came out in 2018.
No, Sherlock Gnomes came out.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Sequel.
Sherlock Gnomes. That's what I wanted to
It's not better. But I think one of the big things is what makes a movie a Razzie movie? What makes a movie the worst film of the year? And I think one of them is just how high profile the bomb is.
Yeah.
And I think when we get to Holmes and Watson, if we are able to, because we're actually
We're having trouble getting a hold of
because it's not on DVD yet. Gotti is, and Winchester's on Netflix, and Robin Hood will actually be released during February. We're kind of in that weird spot with Holmes and Watson where it is not out. It's pretty much out of theaters. I'm sure if we found a second run theater, but I don't have a second run theater near me that I can find, and it's not on DVD yet.
Yeah.
Or streaming. So we don't really have a way of getting it right now. So
We're trying.
yeah, we're looking to see if we can find a second. That's going to be real awkward when I show up there with, like, my notebook. Hey, guys! I mean, I'll be the only person in the theater besides you, so who cares?
It is my beliefs of what makes a bad movie do not line up with the Razzies. Because the year that movie 43 was nominated, I said that was the best of the 5, and it won Worst Picture. Because to the Razzies, the people who vote on these things, like, that had the most celebrities in a bad movie.
Right.
But that movie is exactly what it promises to be. Like, if you pay someone $5 to punch you in your face, when your nose hurts, you only have yourself to blame.
Right.
So, if a movie delivers what it promises, it can't be the worst film. This movie, I feel like, misrepresented itself.
Yeah.
But I think what it is at its core is good.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's definitely got some really, really strong aspects to it. It's got some really fun things about it.
It's not a bucket of laughs. If that's what you're going in there hoping for, it does fail in that department. There are laughs in it. But, like, it's mostly just grit. Because it's a crime drama.
Now, this dovetails into, there was some controversy about whether this was ripping off another show that ran only 5 episodes in 2014.
We talking about Greg the Bunny?
No. We're talking about The Fuzz.
What the hell's The Fuzz?
When a string of violent drug-related crimes rock the seedy Puppet Town neighborhood, Herbie, a puppet cop, must work together with his hapless human partner, Sanchez, to track down the culprit.
What?
Yeah. This was in 2014. This got some attention because my crazy ex-girlfriend, Rachel Bloom, is in this show. And I kind of wanted to drop this on you on air, because it's fun to do that to you.
Who aired this?
I haven't found who aired it yet. I found some trivia. I'm gonna look into it right now. But a lot of people felt that this movie was kind of ripping off because whenever these sorts of things come out, people get mad. Like, people will dig up older media and be like, well, you know, this is really ripping off this other thing. I can't find how it aired, but I can, like, I'm just doing a quick and dirty YouTube search. It does look like it mostly was done as a film. Like, it was 5 episodes. It was the stereotypical 5-episode pilot strung together as a movie.
Huh. Very interesting. Well, that'll be a future episode for sure.
Yes.
Because Puppet Month has been something we've been talking about.
Yes, it absolutely is.
So what was your rating on this one?
To me, this is a stay tuned. Like I said, there are significant flaws to this movie.
Yeah.
I would not be like, well, this shouldn't get a Razzie, this should get an Oscar. But I don't think it's the worst film of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think it's as bad as movies that didn't get nominated because they were lower profile bombs.
Mm-hmm.
I looked into it. Rotten Tomatoes had at least 5 or 6 0% films.
Yeah.
This got a 22%.
I think it was a good movie. And, like, there are parts of this movie where I just stared at it and went, I don't know how this is happening. Like, there's a part where you see Phil running towards the camera, and I was like, that is a 6-year-old in a costume. That is the only way that is possible. And no, it is 3 really good puppeteers working as a team.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an issue that the marketing, because critics go in with preconceptions.
Yeah.
I imagine once they saw this trailer, critics were probably out to hate this movie.
Yeah.
Because honestly, we were all aboard the hype train for this film.
Mm-hmm.
Until those trailers dropped.
Yeah.
And we saw the trailer and I was like, oh, this is not going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a smarter movie. And it was I read the Reddit thread for Our Movies. Every week, Our Movies does Box Office Week.
Right.
And I read these religiously because I'm a weirdo. And a lot of people said they were interested in the idea of the Happytime Murders until they saw the trailer.
Yeah, and the trailer is purposely hiding how intelligent of a film it is.
And they were talking about how, you can polish a turd with a trailer. Mm-hmm. And the classic example of that is Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
If the Suicide Squad movie had been as good as the Suicide Squad Bohemian Rhapsody trailer, we'd had a good movie.
Let me tell you how good this movie is. Every year, I watch the Razzie movies. I watch all 5, and I tweet my experiences. I was so engaged in this film, I never tweeted about it. Because I didn't want to miss anything. Because I liked the movie.
I chose not to tweet about it purely because since we're doing Stay Doomed now, and we hadn't been before, since we're doing each film as its own episode, I kind of didn't want to essentially run through and tweet the whole thing and then be like, oh, now we're going to talk about all those tweets you saw already. Because this is going to come out, like, in 2 weeks, so.
This comes out Monday.
Oh.
What are you talking about?
Huh. It'll be February.
Yeah.
Edit point.
So that's going to do it for our episode on the Happytime Murders, unless you have any more research you wanted to bring up.
No, I was looking into Henson Alternative, and they actually mentioned an influence being another neo-noir with dark secrets on a children's show.
Okay.
Your buddy and mine, Smile Time!
Smile Time?
The Angel episode.
Oh, yes! What a great episode of Angel that is!
And how that was clearly a reference. Like, there was clearly, like, that was Like,
An
clearly an
inspiration?
influence, yes. And I mean, they're the same people who made the same people made the puppets, hence an alternative. Pretty much, if you see the Muppet-style puppets in something that's not kid-friendly, it's hence an alternative.
Yeah.
They did...
If you see good puppets, Henson did it.
Yeah, it's Curious Creations of Christine McConnell. Mm-hmm. Those puppets are hence an alternative. And I really think there would be some really great stuff. I mean, I pulled up the Henson Alternative page, and, like, I'm going to be digging through here to see what kind of one-season wonders we might be able to find here.
Yay!
What are we doing next week?
Next week, we are watching... You can check this movie out on Netflix. Winchester.
I will have to get over my abject hatred of horror films.
Yeah, usually horror films do not get Razzie nods.
Which is why I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and way to go, Razzie's picking this movie and not picking The Snowman last year, because I couldn't wait to hate that movie.
I'm still mad, because, like, the week the Razzie nominations were supposed to come out, I fogged up your bathroom mirror and wrote, Mr. Policeman, you could have saved her, and drew a snowman, and you never noticed it.
I didn't see it for weeks.
I was really mad about that. And by the time you saw that, the joke didn't work anymore.
No, it did not work anymore. So yeah, be sure to check out Winchester on Netflix, and join us next week here on Stay Doomed, and we'll chat about it. Laura, where can people find us?
We can be found at The Stay Doomed Show at gmail.com, or Facebook and Twitter at Stay Doomed.
And what if people wanted to see us, like, live?
If you want to see us live, March 22nd through 24th, we will be appearing at Zenkaikon in Lancaster, PA.
Woot!
We will be doing stand-up comedy. We will be doing Beyond the Tentacle, Fit to be Hentied. And we will be doing 2 brand new panels.
Woohoo!
First, we will be doing Walt Disney's America, which is an educational panel about pretty much Walt Disney, how the Walt Disney Company has represented America and American culture. Mm-hmm. And Stay Doomed Live!
Stay Doomed Live!
It's going to be kind of what we've learned in the first 6 months of Stay Doomed. And how to tell if your favorite show is not going to make it to season 2. And finally, there'll also be Cosplay Pro Wrestling, in which people that look startlingly like us will do fun things.
Yes, it'll be wonderful. If you want to follow me on Twitter and get the next week's episode of Stay Doomed spoilered while I'm tweeting along while watching these movies, I'm at TV's Noah.
If you want to have long, in-depth conversations about puppets and hence an alternative, I am at Priorities. And seriously, if you want to have those conversations, at me. Until next time, stay doomed.